Hello and welcome to German Lessons with Mr. Ferguson. Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum Deutschunterricht mit Herrn Ferguson. Diese 13. grammatische Stunde, the 13th grammar lesson, ist, wie man trennbare Verben benutzt. How to use separable verbs. Before wir anfangen, please don't forget to like this video. Bitte klickt gefällt mir and to subscribe to my channel so that I can keep helping you with your German. Bitte vergesst nicht zu abonnieren. In this lesson, we will be looking at how to use a special type of verb, which is the separable verb. These verbs are so called because they can separate. In order to fully understand this lesson, it's important that you understand how to conjugate both regular and irregular verbs in the present tense. If you aren't sure how to do this, please start by watching my regular verb conjugation video by clicking the banner now. First of all, let's have a look at how to identify a separable verb. The first thing to remember when you encounter a new verb is that you will more than likely find it in its infinitive form. This is the dictionary form which has not yet been changed to fit the user's purpose. Have a look at these infinitives. Aufwachen, to wake up. Verstehen, to understand. Besuchen, to visit. Einkaufen, to shop. Entkommen, to escape. Zerstören, to destroy. Erzählen, to explain. Auskommen, to get along. Mitmachen, to participate. Zugeben, to admit. Ankommen, to arrive. The main way to identify separable verbs is to look at where the stress falls on the verb. If the stress falls on the first syllable, and crucially, if that prefix is a word in its own right, then the verb is likely to be separable. Let's look at these verbs again. Aufwachen, verstehen, besuchen, einkaufen, entkommen, zerstören, erzählen, auskommen, mitmachen, zugeben, ankommen. As you can probably tell, the verbs which had the stress on their first syllable contain the prefixes auf, ein, aus, mit, zu, and an, all of which are words in their own right. These verbs are therefore separable. As it happens, verbs that start with ver, be, ent, zer, and er are never separable. Now that we know some separable verbs, let's have a look at how they work. Let's take the verb aufwachen, to wake up. In order to use a separable verb in the present tense, we need to take the following steps. 1. Separate the verb into its prefix and its verb. So this verb separates into auf and wachen. Next, decide which subject is going to be doing the action. For this example, we will use ich. Next, we take the verb part of the separable verb, wachen, and conjugate it. So we have ich wache. Finally, we take the separable prefix and put it on the end of the clause. This sentence, meaning I wake up, is therefore ich wache auf. If you want to include extra information, that will go between the verb, which has to be in the second position, and the separable prefix, which has to be at the end of the clause. For example, ich wache früh auf. I wake up early. Let's have a look at another example, this time using einkaufen, to shop. The verb separates into ein and kaufen. I've decided that I'm going to say he shops in the supermarket, so I start with I conjugate the verb kaufen, so it becomes kauft. In the supermarket in German is im Supermarkt. And I finish the sentence with the separable prefix ein. Kauft im Supermarkt ein. It's worth mentioning here that there is another way that you can be introduced to separable verbs, and that this is in context. Let's have a look at this sentence. Meine Mutter steht 8 Uhr morgens auf. Even if we don't recognise the verb, we can see that the sentence is in the present tense by the third person T ending on steht. We can also see the separable prefix hovering at the end of the clause. To work backwards, therefore, we need to put steht back into its infinitive, stehen, and stick the separable prefix back to the front. We are therefore left with aufstehen, to get up or to stand up. Meine Mutter steht 8 Uhr morgens auf, therefore, is my mother gets up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Once you have the verb in its infinitive form, you can look up its meaning using one of the websites I've mentioned previously, such as dict.cc or dict.leo.org. One important thing to realise about separable verbs is that they separate when they're conjugated in the present or the imperfect tenses. If you haven't seen my video about the imperfect tense, you can watch it by clicking the banner now. To use separable verbs in the imperfect tense, you follow the same steps that we've already mentioned, but the verb, which is in the second position, is in the imperfect tense rather than the present. Here's an example. Mitmachen, to participate. Ich machte gestern mit. I participated yesterday. Further to this point, separable verbs are almost always stuck together in their infinitive form. For that reason, when you're using the future tense or modal verbs, the infinitive is the same. For example, ich muss zugeben, I have to admit. Or, werdet ihr gut auskommen? Will you, informal plural, get along well? The only time when the infinitives of separable verbs behave slightly differently is when they're used with a zu clause. One phrase I've talked about previously is zu, meaning in order to. This is normally used with an infinitive. For example, Fußball zu spielen, in order to play football. To use this with a separable verb, we simply put the zu between the two halves of the separable verb's infinitive. For example, aufzuwachen, in order to wake up. Another important thing to understand is how to form a separable verb's past participle. If you haven't learnt about the perfect tense yet, it's a good idea to go back and watch that video by clicking the banner now. To form the past participle of a separable verb, we split the verb into separable prefix and verb. Let's look at einkaufen again. This separates into ein and kaufen. To make the past participle, we now get the past participle of the verb, which is gekauft, and the final step is to stick the prefix back onto the front. The past participle of einkaufen is therefore eingekauft. Here we can use it in a sentence. Ich habe gestern in Lidl eingekauft. I shopped in Lidl yesterday. The final thing to mention is that separable verbs can be thought of as a pair of magnets. In the verb ankommen, the N of an can be thought of as being attracted to the K of kommen. That means if the verbs are the other way around, they will repel. We can see that in the sentence, Der Zug kommt an. The train is arriving. But what happens when we use a subordinating conjunction or boot word to send the verb to the end? If the verb kommt were sent to the end of this clause, the N of an and the K of kommt would be next to each other, and so the verb would click back together. For example, Ich muss laufen, weil der Zug ankommt. I have to run because the train is arriving. So that's how to use separable verbs in a number of different scenarios. I'll put a list of common separable verbs, including their past participles, into the description, so do be sure to check it out. Using separable verbs in written and spoken exams is a great way to boost your marks. If you've enjoyed this video, you can buy me a coffee at coffee, that's ko-fi.com/Herr Ferguson. Any donations are gratefully received and allow me to continue to produce new content. Danke im Voraus. It's a good idea to pause the video now to recap what we've covered, including how to identify separable verbs, how to use them in the present, imperfect and perfect tenses, how to use the infinitive of a separable verb, and how to use separable verbs with subordinating conjunctions. Habe ich etwas vergessen? If you're a native German speaker and think I've forgotten something important about separable verbs, please let me know in the comments. Bitte schreibt einen Kommentar. Also, please don't forget to click subscribe to receive all of my German lesson videos, language learning tips and updates. You can also follow me on Instagram with the username Herr Ferguson and on Twitter under @Herr Ferguson. Otherwise, from me, ist Danke und auf Wiedersehen.